All right. Well, the game is well and truly afoot. Where do I start this morning? I'm going to start with the latest political poll. If an election was held tomorrow, things would stay pretty much the same. That's basically what the latest political poll says. No real change. But, of course, an election isn't going to be held tomorrow. And all the movements are within the margin of error. So, to be frank, it doesn't matter what's in the latest One News political poll. What does matter, I think, is what happened at Tūrangawaewae marae yesterday for the Korona Nihana, the celebration of the coronation of the Maori king, who, in case you don't know, is a truck driver. Is he from Ngarawahia? And he's the Maori king. And the Kingitanga movement, supported most obviously by the Tainui Māori, is part of the political landscape in New Zealand when it comes to the 17% of the population who are Māori. So it's not like a mass movement, is it? And yesterday, the person who speaks for the king, and some would say runs the movement, Tukurangi Morgan, told the Prime Minister and the politicians there, the coalition politicians there, that they have thrown Māori under the bus. I would more like to say, no, they've kicked Māori off the gravy train, which for Mr. Morgan is a particularly painful experience. But what we saw yesterday was a not-so-subtle signal sent by the National Party, the senior part of the coalition, that I don't know if it's done polling or it's a genuinely held position, but they are going, for want of a better word, woke when it comes to issues of race. Tama Pautaka made it clear that the Prime Minister has told him, and it's since in social media been confirmed by Prime Minister Chris Luxon, that the position has shifted from we will only support Acts Treaty Principles Bill, we've only committed to support it to the first reading, to we will not support it past the first reading. With New Zealand First also taking that position, the Treaty Principles Bill is as good as dead. It's all over rover for this piece of legislation. A piece of legislation which the ACT Party argues was a conversation and was to spark a conversation to give all New Zealanders certainty as to their status as citizens in relation to the Treaty of Waitangi, and whether or not the Treaty of Waitangi, a document which lay dormant for many, many years, does in fact confer different privileges or different rights on New Zealanders according to their race, according to their heritage and their ancestry. That is what it was designed to do. But it will not get past its first reading in Parliament, even though we do not know the shape of the legislation. And that is because Chris Luxon has got off the fence and he has decided that, well, he's going along with outfits like the Herald. And he's going along with the pearl clutchers and those who do not want to face a debate that this country, I believe, desperately needs to have. I am not invested in the outcome, but you must have free speech and debate. Clearly, Chris Luxon's advisors, those who do the intricate polling that he bases many of his political decisions on, have decided that woke is the way to go. I gained some late career notoriety a couple of years back when I asked a very simple question of the then Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, and that question is, what is a woman? Were Mr. Luxon's advisors to let him come on and be interviewed by me, I now know the fundamental question I would ask Chris Luxon, and that is, what are the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi? And if he's going to tell me, oh, we've moved past that, or, well, you know, it's kind of like a little bit, everyone knows. No, you tell me. And you tell every other New Zealander, Prime Minister, because we have a right to know. We have a right to know how our courts are going to interpret the Treaty of Waitangi, what impact it might have on our access or non-access to government-paid services. Whether or not other New Zealanders might get privileges we don't have because of the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. They are not written down anywhere. They are not defined in statute. You cannot hold them or a piece of paper with them written on them in your hand. And those who say they do know what they are seem to change them at will. And the principles themselves, as propagated by the wokesters, are actually longer and more detailed than the very, very simple Treaty of Waitangi itself. It would also appear that Winston Peters, via Shane Jones, who spoke on the marae yesterday at Tūrangawaewae, has totally abandoned the Treaty Principles Bill. But does that mean that they're going to stop, for instance, getting a bit down on the Waitangi Tribunal? And yes, as someone's just texted to me, asking Luxon what the principles of the treaty are will be like asking Chippy what is a woman. Now, it might be that the National Party was speaking to the crowd in front of it at Tūrangawaewae marae, but it would be naive of them to think that the rest of New Zealand will not hear what they said. I note that Television New Zealand, as part of its Varian poll, has, of course, upped the ante on this issue and in some ways fed into the narrative that has been created around this issue by asking in a poll, do you think the government is increasing or decreasing racial tensions, the coalition? And, of course, all the wokesters have answered, oh, it's much, much worse. But I'd say no one's being thrown under the bus here. We're making sure everyone's got equal access to a seat. And that means, of course, fit and able people and younger people stand and hold on to the rail. And we let the most vulnerable in our society have a seat. And then we have a chat about where the bus is going. I'd say to Mr. Morgan, no one's been thrown on under the bus. And as I said, what's really happened here is you're being thrown off the gravy train. And I think a vast majority of New Zealanders, despite the unwillingness of the National Party and the Prime Minister to engage on these issues, are more than happy with that state of affairs.